Reason number 2 that weed control is difficult: when you're dealing with a multiple number of turf types. So you could say that in different ways. Variety of turf types, numerous turf types, dealing with turf types, whatever you want to call it or summarize it, it just makes it difficult. If you didn't have a multiplicity, if you didn't have a plethora of different turf types you were dealing with, weed control would be so much different. And I'm going to stay behind the screen because I want to be able to point and show you things from this side of the video more on this one. I'm not so concerned about, if this one lies at number 2, 3, 4, 5. Really, for my top 5 reasons, the only one I'm really concerned about concentrating on, or the only one that I really am going to make a valiant effort to convince you it's number 1, is number 1. And so you have to watch video number 1 to find out about that. But for reasons 2 through 5, you could an argument could be made to interchange the top 2 through number 5 reasons that weed control is difficult. So I'm not going to really talk any more about that point. And this is closely related to point number 4, which was plant health, or keeping nearby plants alive. Because when you do weed control in a yard, you have to keep your Bermuda alive if you're spraying Bermuda. And well, if you have a St. Augustine yard, you have to consider, if you have significant portions of Bermuda, you don't want to kill your Bermuda, or vice versa. If you have mostly a Bermuda yard but you have a significant portion of St. Augustine, then you have to consider that. And so it just makes it difficult. And while I wait to get to some of my main points, I want to walk and show you this yard also has some centipede. And so the unfortunate thing of weed control is, what I like to say all the time is there's no paradise this side of paradise. And so there just doesn't exist a whole lot of yards that only has one type of turf grass, and that just simply makes it difficult. If you didn't have that, if everything was all the same turf grass everywhere, it would make it so much easier. But guess what? You can't even just say, okay, I'm only going to treat Bermuda yards, or I'm only going to treat St. Augustine yards, because within a yard there exists many different environments that different types of grass do better. And so up here we have some centipede grass growing amongst the St. Augustine grass. You say, how do you know that? Well, one way, St. Augustine grass has really flat stolons, leaf sheaths. Centipede does not have that same flatness. Let's see if I can pull up a stolon of centipede. In this particular spot, sometimes you can pull them up, but you can't even pull up a runner or a stolon of centipede. At least not right here, whereas St. Augustine, you're able to kind of pull them out, and like I said, they just have a certain look. But that's for another video. So back to my point, most yards have a multiplicity of turf types. And so why is that difficult? Well, oh, lovely, and here's some zoysia. So we have all 4 of our main 4 turf types. Let's show you a zoysia seed head, because I don't talk about that a whole lot in these videos. There's your zoysia grass seed head. But anyway, so let's say you're trying to, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. I really wasn't even planning on this. I was going to say we actually have about 6 turf types, and that's because one of them is torpedo. Here's some torpedo grass. Torpedo's starting to take over more and more, which I cannot believe that was really there, because I was about to say we have technically 6 in central Mississippi: Bermuda, Centipede, St. Augustine, Zoysia, and then as you see we have torpedo starting to come in to yards, and there's no way to get it out without just killing the whole thing. And we also have carpet grass, and I bet if I tried hard enough I could go find some carpet grass in this yard. But I'll save that. To that point, Celsius kills carpet grass. You can't just say, well, I'll just spray Celsius. If you have a St. Augustine yard and you want to get rid of some buttonweed or some doveweed, or let's say you have a Bermuda yard and you want to get rid of some doveweed, well, guess what? You can't just go spray Celsius without considering what are the different types of turf grass here, because if you have a lot of carpet or just a patch of carpet in one part of the yard, and who knows, what's growing in these back areas of the yard, then you can't just say I'm just going to spray Celsius on it, because Celsius will kill carpet grass right here. So we have this really higher elevated place, and it goes down, 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 down. It might be hard to tell from this video, but it just goes down, down, down. And guess what? What is Bermuda grass like? It really likes wetness. Guess what St. Augustine doesn't like? It doesn't like wetness. It does not like wet feed at all. Bermuda grass will live and even thrive in a ditch where it stays wet, but St. Augustine does not. And so you kind of need to cater to the different types of turf, because it's going to always be an uphill battle right here with keeping this St. Augustine alive, because water's always going to really come during the wet times of the year right here and give opportunity for the St. Augustine to take over. And so, like I said, it's a really similar conversation to keeping nearby plants alive, but it's still its own point, though, that it's not just the fact that you're trying to keep your turf grass alive. Because let's say everybody did have St. Augustine and the whole world was just St. Augustine. Well, guess what? I guess that would be a point in itself. Well, but the separate points there is that it's one thing to keep St. Augustine alive. That's the point I was trying to make in reason number 4, is you got to keep St. Augustine alive. You can't just nuke it. But the point of this video is that this is just not reality, though. There are different types of turf, and so keeping the other types of plants alive, it's just difficult. And so there is a variety of plants. So sorry if I keep repeating myself on that. But let's talk about that. So St. Augustine, we treat yards differently according to their different turf type. St. Augustine centipede yards, we treat them pretty much the exact same way, because from a weed control and herbicide tolerance standpoint, they're very, very, very similar. Not the exact same, but very similar. And Bermuda Zoysia yards, we treat a different way. The downside, like this yard, we treat it as a Centipede St. Augustine yard. We call it CSA for short. Centipede St. Augustine CSA. So CSA yards, we don't put down a pre-emerge in the spring, because we want the runners, like in places like this where where you get wetness, a lot of wetness, excessive wetness, you get large patch issues. That's a disease, a turfgrass disease. And when you don't deal with the disease, then guess what fills in its spots? Bermuda, because guess what? Bermuda doesn't mind the wetness. And so in order to give the St. Augustine its best chance to fill in those areas, if you don't put a crabgrass pre-emerge in the spring, the St. Augustine has its best chance to fill in. Whereas if you put a crabgrass pre-emerge, for example, prodiamine, a root pruner, then yeah, you can prevent crabgrass, most likely. Excessive wet conditions can water it down to where it doesn't prevent the crabgrass. But you have to choose plant health or weed control prevention. And so again, I know that's hard to decipher the difference in reason number 4, plant health, and reason number 2 here with numerous types of turf. But you just can't do weed control without considering, do I have other types of turf? Because here, guess what we have coming up in the Bermuda grass? Because we don't do a crabgrass pre-emerge. We have crabgrass. And we have sedges. And the reason why there's sedges here and not sedges in the St. Augustine, at least not in abundance, is because healthy St. Augustine keeps these weeds out, whereas Bermuda grass really allows Kalinga and spurge, and then we even have some goosegrass here. I don't see goosegrass a whole lot, ever really, so I'm kind of surprised to see that. But it hampers weed control efforts when you try to deal with one type of turf. With the CSA, you let your crabgrass in more, you let the buttonweed in more, but we can't just treat it all like it's a Bermuda grass yard, because if we did that and we use the rates that we use on Bermuda grass to kill sedges and spurge and to prevent crabgrass, we're going to harm our CSA. And so we don't do it. One thing we do is we do add-on treatments for our CSA yards that have these types of issues, because not everybody's yards has this, the same amount of areas that merit or warrant an extra treatment. But that's also going to play into video number 1, or reason number 1 as to why weed control really gets difficult, is because, well, I can't tell you until you watch video number 1.